Okay, so just to kind of go back to what I was talking about here. So the Hawaiʻi Farmers Market Association, as I said, kind of a brand new entity. We really just got launched earlier this year. And we were able to do that with a grant from USDA that really focuses on farmers market promotion. So as I was saying, kind of the four main areas of focus for our association are these four listed here. So one is really helping to market and promote our farmers markets as well as their producers. Second is to provide technical assistance and educational resources such as this webinar today, as well as other networking opportunities. Third, we're really working to increase market sales and access through expansion of farmers market nutrition programs. And we can talk a little bit more about those. And then lastly, it's just to create a collective platform, for data collection, reporting, advocacy, and just to make sure that community voice is heard, in really supporting our farmers markets. So as I was mentioning, this is a project of the Hawaii Good Food Alliance. And you can learn more about us at this website that is here, hawaiigoodfoodalliance.org. But we're really a collective of local food focused organizations from across all the islands. And you can see some of the logos here on the bottom. And those are the ones most directly involved in this farmers market project. So far, this is kind of a summary of our current resources. When we started this project earlier in the year, we said, okay, what we really want to do is figure out what farmers market managers need and how can we help them. So we put together a survey. Hopefully, and probably those of you that are joining us today have already filled out that survey. But you can see the link here. I think we can also put it in the chat if that helps. But basically, if you haven't taken it, please do. Or if you have friends or colleagues that you know who run markets, please ask them to fill it out. It will stay open probably through the end of this calendar year. And that's really what helps us know what different market managers need. And so one of the things we heard, initially was insurance, which kind of led us to this here today. So we really are just trying to hear from all of you and how we can support you. We have also put together an online directory of farmers markets and local recipes. So that you can find at our website, which is down here at the bottom of the slide, hawaiifarmersmarkets.org. A really exciting opportunity is this next bullet. We have a mini grant program specifically for farmers markets who are interested in implementing SNAP EBT. So that webinar is going to be next Friday on the 20th. And then there'll be a 1-month window to get your applications in for those grants. And as I said, we're continuing to develop more resources for farmers market managers. So we really want to hear from you guys, whether it's today or in the future, just what we can do to support your needs. And so you can stay updated with all of that by, going to our website, by joining our Facebook group. We do have a listserv. So we actually sent out our first newsletter this past week. So you can stay updated on all of the opportunities as they get rolled out. And so part of this program was we really wanted to make sure we had TAs or technical assistants available on each island. So whatever island your farmers market is located on, we have a point person. And some islands have more than one TA, but we kind of put the lead one on this slide. So Hawaii Island, we have Donna Mitz from the Kohala Center. On Oahu, we have Saleh Azizi with Kahumana and Hawaii Farmers Union United. For Maui County, we have Lauren Lohr from the Hawaii Institute for Public Health. And on Kauai, we have Megan Fox from Malama Kauai. And then I have my own contact info here if you have any kind of general statewide questions. So with that, basically, I just wanted to I'm going to turn it over to our expert insurance guy, Mr. Larry Spilker, who is here today with us from Campbell Risk Management. But I just wanted to let everyone know that I know there's probably going to be questions that come up. You can feel free to either put them in the chat or you can wait till the end. And then at the end, we'll try and answer the questions that are in the chat. And if you have any questions that you just want to, unmute yourself and ask, we'll have time for that as well. Okay, so with that, I'll turn it over to Larry. Thank you so much for being here today, and you can take it away.
Thanks all for inviting me to be here. We had put together a program specifically targeted for farmers markets and farmers market vendors back about 11 years ago. It started with a extension office for the Department of Agriculture out of Ohio that requested us to see if we could put together a program for the Farmers Market Association of Ohio. And there wasn't anything that we could find out there that was available on a national level. There was a few regional companies here or there that were trying to fill the needs of farmers markets or farms. Nobody really had addressed it on a large scale. So we started talking to associations such as the Washington Farmers Market Association, the New York Farmers Market Association. Ohio didn't really have one. They had a fledgling one at the time. And Colorado, and we're just basically kind of on a fact find to see what kind of needs were out there for small producers, vendors, as well as the markets themselves. And we were able to get some underwriters of insurance companies to set up and take interest. And over the course of a couple of years, we were able to put together a program for insurance for farmers markets, farmers market associations, and vendors across the nation. And it only works at a very inexpensive rate if there's a lot of participants. So basically, it works as a risk purchase group. The more members that are in there, the less expensive, obviously, the insurance can be, but there has to be enough participation to be able to pay out claims when they come in. So it's kind of a give and take with the insurance company and the vendors and the markets and everybody kind of working together to create a safe environment. The less claims that the program itself experiences, and the more participants there are, the cheaper that we can make it available to small producers and markets around the nation. So it used to be years ago, if you can flip the slide on me to the next one, that'd be great. I don't have control of it. Maybe to the next one there after that there. So why do markets and vendors need insurance? Years and years ago, markets just got together. It was a group of farmers or folks got together and they threw up some tables in a church parking lot, and everybody got together, and for years they sold their stuff and everything was fine, and nobody even really thought about insurance. When we started doing this 10 years ago, people didn't even, probably 20% of the folks that were out there even had insurance at that time. It's a big statistic there. I think it was 27% had insurance, and so what's happened over the course of the years as attorneys have been able to advertise on television and things like that have occurred to where you can't hardly turn on the television anymore without hearing some attorney on there saying, if you've been injured in an accident, call Bob Walmsley at this number and we'll get you hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if you're in a situation where you're inviting the public out to your establishment, be it inside or outside, and they twist their ankle or they step on a root or they whatever the case is, and they'll be sitting down 6 months later watching TV, not working because of COVID or whatever the case might be, and think, you know what, I did hurt my back that one time when I was at the farmer's market, and then they'll make that phone call. Next thing you know, you got a lawsuit. And crazy as it seems, we've seen as the COVID cases spike, so have the lawsuits in this program. We've had more this year than we've ever had before. Crazy is that the incidents aren't happening this year because the markets are closed. We're seeing lawsuits come in where people are suing from last year's accident that they say that they had. So these accidents, the last 5 claims that have come through weren't for incidents that occurred in 2020. They were for incidents that occurred in 2019. So just because you don't see something pop up right away from somebody, that doesn't mean that they are not necessarily going to turn around and sue you. A lot of times the markets are they're on land that they don't personally own. You know, the operators of the market don't own the land that they're holding the farmers market on. And many of the landowners now are requiring that a farmer's market have insurance for themselves, not only for themselves, but that they list the landowner as an additional insured, because they don't want to get sued for somebody that was walking through the market and slipped and fell, and it was because of a hole in the ground or whatever the case is, they tripped over something and the landowner doesn't want to get sued. So they want to make sure that the market has insurance and that they list the landowner as an additional insured. When you list the landowner as an additional insured, what happens is if they get sued for something that occurred at the market, that was the market's fault, they're covered under your policy as a third party that got drug into it, even though they didn't have anything to do with it. But attorneys like to sue everybody, so they'll sue the whole gamut of people. We had a situation where somebody slipped and fell on a sidewalk at a farmer's market that was held through a sidewalk area. They sued the farmer's market, they sued the town, and they sued every business that had a business on that block. So crazy what they'll do to try and get everybody named in a lawsuit and see how much money that they can drag out of it. So that's the reason why the market itself needs a policy. So the market's policy covers things for the common areas of the market, or say signage, for example. If you had a sign out that said market open today from 8 until noon, and it blows away and then damages somebody's car or injures somebody, that's the market sign. It's the market's responsibility. And so that would be something that would be covered under the market's policy. Or somebody's walking through one of the common areas of the farmer's market. Doesn't have anything to do with the vendor, just one of the common areas of the market. They slip and fall and injure themselves. That kind of issue would be handled under the market itself. So the market itself gets an insurance policy, covers the landowner, because everybody's going to get sued in that particular situation. Markets, and then what needs to occur to close all the exposure gaps is not only that the market has an insurance policy and list the landowner as additional insured, the vendors then need to have insurance and list the market as an additional insured, because it works up the chain there. So say a vendor leases a space from you, and they then become, that's their then liability. It's no longer the market's liability. It's kind of like if you own a mall and you rent a space to a store, that store becomes that store, it's their responsibility for anything that happens within that store. So in like manner, if a vendor leases a space from you or a booth space, what happens within that space is the vendor's responsibility, and the attorneys will take it that way. So vendors need to have their own insurance. If their tent blows away and kills somebody or damages somebody's car, or something falls off their table and somebody slips and falls on it and injures themselves, that's not the market's responsibility. That's the vendor's liability. But you'll get drug into that and you'll be named in that lawsuit. If their tent blows away and kills somebody, it's going to be the vendor's fault, and they're also going to say it's the market manager's fault because they should have made sure that it was weighed down better. I mean, they'll use every angle they can to try and convince a judge or jury that everybody has to pay on this. So you want to make sure that vendors have insurance and that the market requires them to be, it requires to list them as an additional insured on that insurance policy. If you do that, then that kind of closes the exposure gaps from the vendor all the way up to the person that owns the land, so that nobody's left twisting in the wind. Now, that being said, we get asked quite often about what about the market manager, or am I personally liable, okay, as a market manager? The question, or the answer to that is, it depends on how you're set up. If you're structured as a sole proprietor or just an individual that is owning and operating a farmer's market, it's possible that you personally could have some liability there in the event, say, for example, that somebody slipped and fell and injured themselves and they needed care for the rest of their lives because of it, and a judge awarded $2.5 million. And the limit on your policy that you purchased was $2 million. Well, the insurance company will pay the $2 million, but then they're going to come after you personally for that $500,000. So if you're structured as a sole proprietor, you do have some personal liability there. If you're set up as an LLC or a corporation, they're limited to the assets that the LLC or corporation has. So it just depends on how you're structured as to whether or not you personally are going to be on the hook. I actually have never seen a claim come through that has exceeded the insurance limit that was there. It hasn't happened before, but it's possible. I take that back. It occurred one time, and that was in California. Somebody drove into a market, and I think there was multiple deaths that were involved in it, and the lawsuit came out to $20 million was what was paid out. So very rare instance. I don't think you're going to see that, but just to be aware of that when you're getting insurance, what that means. Now, when you're talking about general liability insurance, and that's what this is, it's liability. Liability has no deductible. You're not paying anything out of your pocket if something happens, like you would in a car accident where you're trying to pay a $500 or $250 deductible, and then the insurance company pays after that. For liability insurance, there's no deductible, and the claims are paid from $1. So it also covers the cost of defense, whether you're found to be at fault or not. People will file frivolous lawsuits. People will file lawsuits against you that you have nothing to do with. Let me give you some examples of something like that. In a general liability situation, here recently in the state of New York, we had a vendor and a market get sued because of a box that somebody had fallen over that was sitting on the sidewalk, and they said that it was the vendor's fault and that the market should have made sure that that was clear and so forth. Well, it turned out that the market, the farmer's market keeps very good records, and there was no, the vendor wasn't even there that day. He wasn't even attending the market. That's his normal station where he normally is, but that particular day he wasn't even there, and that's when the accident occurred. And yet, but they still got named in that lawsuit. So again, things like that can happen to where the insurance it's so important to have that type of thing, that type of coverage for liability. And my point was I was trying to make on that was the fact that even though they weren't there, the lawsuit was there, and the insurance company paid to have that thrown out of court and prove that the vendor wasn't actually there, and it wasn't the vendor's fault, it wasn't the market's fault, it was actually one of the stores that were on the street that had done it. But it didn't cost the vendor anything, it didn't cost the market anything, because that insurance paid for that cost of defense, even though that it wasn't anything that involved them to begin with. So one of the things, I think, if we can move maybe to the next slide over. Oh, there we go. So there's general liability. The general liability is covering for operational exposures, slips and falls, tents blowing away, that kind of thing. The other thing that pops up in the farmers market related world is product liability. And those are claims that can pop up if somebody claims that they got sick or they got injured in some way because of what they bought from them. There's here like in Washington, there's an attorney's office out of Seattle whose sole purpose in their operation is to pursue liability claims for foodborne illnesses. That's all they do. And so it's becoming more and more prevalent. I was talking with a nurse earlier today out of Florida that was setting up as a vendor at a farmer's market, and she wanted to get as much a highest limit as she could, because she said, you just have no idea how many people come through our emergency room claiming that they got food poisoning, and the first thing out of their lips constantly is they start talking about suing people. They want to sue the restaurants, they want to sue the grocery store, they want to sue whoever then they want to sue the doctors, and they want to sue everybody. So, the bottom line is that we see more claims for operational exposures than anything else. In the last couple of months, this program has paid out $260,000 in operational exposure claims, slips and falls, twisted ankles. You had a vendor that stepped in a hole and asked the market manager for a Band-Aid a year ago, and they're going to end up with about $40,000 for a Band-Aid. I mean, it's crazy when these attorneys get in and start suing for all this permanent soft tissue damage that's occurred. But anyway, so we have more operational exposure claims that come through than anything else, but we do have product liability claims that we see pop through as well, where somebody's claiming that they got injured because of what they bought from someone, allergic reactions to body lotions. You could have a candle that somebody makes, and the candle burns out the side and burns down the person's entire house. And then they turn around and sue, the crafter that was selling candles at the farmers market that they made from beeswax. So there's no limit to the creativity that these attorneys and people come up with in ways to sue you. So I don't bring all these examples up, and these examples that I'm giving you are real. These things that I'm telling you actually occur and have occurred, and we've had to deal with. But if you allow, as a market owner or operator, for a vendor to operate at your market without any insurance, then you're setting yourself up for issues, because 100% of the time that a market gets, or a vendor has gotten sued, the market has gotten named in that lawsuit every single time. We had a situation to where the vendor had they had the market at a public park, and the market had been closed for an hour. The vendor was backing up his van to load up his station and ran over a 5-year-old kid that wasn't paying attention to what was going on. Now the child survived, but the leg got broken and so forth of the child, and it was a mess. And they sued everybody, and the market ended up. I mean, they got money from the vendor, they got money from the vendor's auto policy, but they also got money from the market, because the market had its vendor policies and procedures written out, and it said in those policies and procedures that vendors could not come in and load or unload their stations until 15 minutes after the market had closed. And the jury determined, and the judge said that it should have said that 15 minutes after the market is closed and all shoppers have exited the premises. Because it didn't have that one statement in there about all shoppers exiting the premises before they can do it, the market was found to be also at fault in that particular instance. Again, the insurance company pays for that kind of thing, but it's another example of why it's so important that not only the market has insurance, but the vendors have insurance, and that everybody's listed as additional insureds, so everybody's back is covered there. A policy for the market itself, a policy for the vendor itself. It does not cover the market employees personally being injured. Okay, so if you have a market manager and they throw their back out, or a vendor's at a station and they injure themselves, you want to make sure that for your employees, if you need to have coverage for something like that, it's called workers' compensation. It's not something that we offer. You'd have to get a workers' compensation insurance policy to cover employees that work for you if they are personally themselves injured. The general liability policy does not cover employees or volunteers that work for the market. Vendors in like way, it's a good idea. I've had several instances markets saved from a lot of pain by, in their vendor policies, procedures, and agreements, that they have a hold harmless agreement that's built into that the vendors sign, that says basically they understand that they're working at their own risk, and that they agree to hold the market harmless if they themselves are personally injured while they're on the grounds. So if they're setting up their station and they slip and fall, you don't want them turning around suing the market. So it's a good idea to have them sign a hold harmless agreement, that they understand that they're doing this at their own risk. So, all right, if you can switch over to the next slide for me there. I think there we go. All right. I know insurance is so exciting. I hope everybody's still awake. This is fun stuff. This is what you will get. This is the important piece that you will get when you purchase an insurance policy. This is a certificate of insurance. The certificate of insurance, and I've kind of laid it out here with the red showing and arrows pointing to what's what here, so you can have this for your reference in the future, and what a properly formatted certificate looks like. But basically, the top red box, that's just going to have your name or the vendor's name, and it has their mailing address. This does not have the market location address in it. This is the named insured. This is who is actually insured. If it was the market, it would have the market's name and the mailing address for the market. Same thing with the vendor. That just tells you who is insured. As you move down from that, you'll see a couple of boxes that are checked. In that next red box below that, it says X indicates the policy includes waiver of subrogation and additional insured. Those two boxes should be checked on a certificate of insurance showing that they have an additional insured. If it's the market certificate, it would be the landowner. If it's the vendor, it would be the market. Waiver of subrogation means that basically they can't jump out and pay out on behalf of somebody else and then come after you for what another insurance company paid out. It's just it's a good idea to have waiver of subrogation on a policy. It means another insurance company can't pay out and then come back after you. Next to that, you've got your effective and expiration dates. This is something that's missed quite a bit when you're looking at insurance. You say you're requiring a vendor to have insurance and they hand you their policy. You want to check to make sure that those effective dates actually have an insurance policy effective while they're there selling at your farmers market. I've had people submit expired, certificates that were gone, had been expired for 2 years, and they were, we're just turning them in. If you don't pay attention to it and you just say, oh, you just need certificate of insurance, and you say thanks a lot, and you throw it in the file, you would just take a second and review it really quick. If you get an insurance policy through us for the market, you can upload your vendor certificates to us as you get them in, and we can review those really quick. We're experts at this. We don't expect you guys to be insurance experts. If you want us to take a quick look at the vendors' certificates that get submitted into you, we can tell you if there's any issues that need to be addressed very, very quickly. We just email you back and say, hey, look, it's expired. Okay, certificates of insurance. You can upload certificates of insurance to us. We'll be happy to take a look at them for you. Limits most markets require is $1 million per occurrence, $2 million aggregate limit. What that means is $1 million is the most that will pay for any one claim. $2 million is the most that would pay for any one policy year. That's about the minimum requirement that any market anywhere in the country is having for themselves or for vendors. You can get $2 million per occurrence, $4 million aggregate limit. Some people prefer to get that. For the program that we do, it's a $25 difference in cost from $1 million policy or a $2 million policy. So it's not really that consequential cost-wise to do it. I would recommend, especially if you're a sole proprietor or individual without an LLC or corporation, that you get the $2 million instead of the $1 million policy. Okay, so the bottom of this certificate of insurance is where you're going to have listed yourself as additional insured or the landowner as an additional insured. There's a description box at the bottom, and then below that, in the very bottom left-hand corner, there's a certificate holder. Being a certificate holder only means one thing. That means that in the event that somebody cancels their policy prior to its expiration date, they're going to make an attempt to notify you and let you know, hey, you have a certificate of insurance, you're a certificate holder, and the policy was canceled. So that keeps somebody from buying a policy and giving you a certificate and 2 days later canceling their insurance. So you're sitting there thinking they have insurance and they actually don't. That doesn't make you an additional insured. That just makes you a certificate holder. So in the description box up above that, that's where it can state in there statements such as the certificate holder is hereby an additional insured. And if your name and address are listed there in the certificate holder box, that means you're an additional insured. It could specifically say in that description box that you are an additional insured. The Sunrise Farmers Market is an additional insured. That works as well. Sometimes it also will say that there's a blanket additional insured endorsement on the policy. And that's what ours has. It has a blanket additional insured endorsement. The reason we do that is because so many vendors that we deal with sell at multiple locations, multiple farmers markets or multiple venues, and they can have one certificate that automatically covers all those venues as additional insureds. Our policies are not cancelable or refundable. So once a vendor buys it from us, they can't cancel it even if they wanted to. So those expiration dates are solid. So that gives you an idea. You can kind of use this as a reference. And again, if you have any questions about certificates for yourself or certificates that others are giving to you, you're welcome to email them to us, or we can, or you can upload them through our web platform. So that is what you're going to get in the end. That's the one-page document that is used by every insurance company. It's all used in the same format. So you're going to see something like this that's relatively uniform. You're not going to see different kinds of papers. You might see somebody that tries to submit over to you a deck page to their homeowner's policy or something like that. And that is one thing that comes up that we get from market managers, is that somebody says, well, I got $1 million, umbrella liability on my home, so I'm good to go. And that is not the case. Homeowners policies are personal policies. Commercial operations are specifically excluded, so it doesn't cover them under a homeowner's policy for them coming out to the farmers market. They need a commercial general liability policy. And I have gone on for close to 45 minutes now when I'm not being cut off by the phone company. So I'll real quick go through this last point and then open it up to questions if you have any. But there's a couple of different kinds of insurance that are available on the market. One is admitted, which means that the state of Hawaii, the insurance commissioner there has approved it. They've researched the company. They've said, we believe that this is a good, solid insurance product, and we're going to stamp our approval on it and admit it in the state of Hawaii. If they do that, it then becomes guaranteed by the state of Hawaii that even if the insurance company were to go insolvent or go out of business, it's guaranteed by the state that the claims are paid and that the policy remain in force. That is ultimately the best type of insurance that you want to have, rather than what's called excess and surplus lines insurance, which isn't approved. It can be sold in the state of Hawaii, but it's not approved by the state, and it's not backed by the state. Excess and surplus lines companies, we had one in Texas that was selling insurance for farmers markets, and that was called Farmers Market InsureNow.com, and they sold insurance policies to folks that one day they shut down their doors, disconnected their phone number, and they just disappeared. And it turned out that they collected a bunch of money from markets and vendors around the country and never even sent it to the insurance company to put a policy in place. So people thought they had insurance and they actually didn't. They had really nice, pretty certificates of insurance, but they actually didn't have coverage. And there wasn't any recourse because it wasn't backed by the state. They still haven't found them. Some markets will have in their vendor procedures where they list that vendors are required to have insurance. They will also put in there that you're required to have insurance with an admitted insurance carrier in the state of Hawaii. So that kind of covers that, and the vendor can make sure that they're getting admitted insurance versus excess and surplus lines. So anyhow, that kind of wraps up a quick presentation. If you are interested in getting something like this, or vendors are, you can go to our website, campbellriskmanagement.com. You can get a live quote for an insurance policy. Vendors can get a live quote. Markets can get a live quote. You'll just answer a couple of questions, and it'll tell you on the screen how much it's going to be for a policy. Most markets and vendors, if they're small, say under $25,000 in gross revenues, you're looking at $275 for $1 million policy, or $300 for a $2 million policy. It goes up with your revenue. $50 more if you're selling, say, between 25 and 100,000. That's as a vendor. As a market, when we ask for what the market revenue is, that's based on what you receive for stall fees, that sort of thing, not what the aggregate sales of all the vendors combined are. So when we ask for the market's revenue, it's what the market itself actually receives. So we kind of have a table here on pricing. I don't need to go through that. You can actually, if you go onto our website and answer the first 2 or 3 questions, it'll pop that pricing up for you there, so you can see in your specific situation how much your cost would be if you wanted to get an insurance policy under this program through the Hawaiʻi Farmers Market Association. And same thing for vendors. They can do this. They can do the same thing as well. I'll open it up. I know we're kind of running on a time crunch here, and I don't want to keep you guys forever. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you. Or you can email me questions, or you can call me outside of the meeting here, and I'll be happy to discuss, any of your individual concerns as well. So I don't know how you want to handle the questions here. We'll jump out and answer them live if you like.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you so much, Larry. That was super informative and cool. Really appreciate you taking the time to go through all that. Sorry, I couldn't see the chat while I was sharing my screen. So Stormy, I don't know if you see if there's any questions in there, or anyone. This is a really small group. So if anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask the question directly, please go ahead. Okay, I guess you gave them all the info, Larry.
Well, it seems that the questions do pop up, and if you do have any, don't hesitate to give us a call here. In Indianapolis, we're 6 hours ahead of you in time. I think.
Yeah, now
5.
Okay. Now 5 hours. Yeah. So sorry, Hawaii doesn't do time.
Oh, that's right. When we set this up, it was 5 hours, and then on November 1st, it changed, so it was 6. That's why we were off an hour. So yeah, so if you have any questions, just give me a call or drop me an email, and I'll be happy to discuss your specific situations or instances, or you can just go to our website. But I appreciate you guys having us on here. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Great. Thank you so much, Larry. Super appreciate it. Thank you all for joining.
Have a great.
Okay.